I'm gonna try sewing again. It's not that I don't like sewing. I think I've romanticized it so much that whenever I do it, I remember how horrible and frustrating it can be. And I've had more failed sewing projects than successful ones. But the only way to turn the tables and to shift the scales there is to continue having successful projects. You might recognize my in progress lily gown. It's not done yet. It's only about knee length right now. I've just gotten into the mesh section. I'm a couple rows into that. So the idea is that it's this like rather full stitch. It's clearly like a lace see-through gown, right? It's not full coverage, but it's fuller coverage. It's more opaque in this skirt section until the knees. And then below the knees, it's like a mesh kind of net. I foolishly thought it would be the kind of mesh that is like half the stitches of the rest of the skirt, right? Because you're like skipping every other stitch. No. It's the same amount. It's just stretched out with chain ones in between. So it's going to be a slog, but overall the dress has gone very fast. I did previously mention that I love this pattern and I recommend it and I think it's really fun. However, very shortly after I said that, the pattern designer, Madeline Golding, took down all her patterns and she's kind of suspended her website, and she did an Instagram post about how, based on my own perception, this particular pattern took off and was very successful. And I think she, as a singular person, was not prepared for the volume of inquiries and questions and customer service she would just have to provide about the patterns. So she decided to stop selling patterns for the time being because it's too much, which I understand. It is a shame because it's a lovely pattern and I wish more people could make it, but hopefully she'll figure that situation out and maybe it'll be available in the future. I am selfishly incredibly glad that I decided to buy it when I did, because I actually only purchased it like less than 2 weeks before she decided to take it down. And it was one of those things that I had been planning on for months. I bought this yarn months ago and it was in the back of my head, but I just hadn't decided to start yet. I'm very glad that I decided to start when I did and I actually got the pattern because I think it's lovely. I don't need any customer support with it. I think it's easy enough to follow. But here we are. This is Lion Brand Re-Up in the colorway Pomegranate. It's this like recycled cotton polyester blend. This is my 3rd out of 4 cones that I bought to make this. It's going great so far. It is very heavy, but I think that's kind of the idea, that the skirt pulls down on the bodice and makes it fit, because otherwise it might be too scrunched up. And as I mentioned, it's completely see-through. So I do plan on sewing a slip dress, which is what we're working on today. I have this material, which isn't a match, but I think it coordinates well enough. It's satiny. It is shinier on the right side. I just thought I would sew as simple a slip dress as I possibly could to go underneath this. I found a free pattern from Mood Fabrics. It's called the Hana dress. I will, of course, link it in the description. It says you need 2.5 yards of fabric. However, it's not giving any different yardage for any of the sizes. It comes from size 00 to size 32. So that's like a lot of sizes. It says 2.5 yards for all of them, which just can't be true because like categorically different sizes require different amounts of yardage. So I'm hoping that I can get away with the 2 yards that I already bought. Also, this pattern, the Hana dress, goes well below the knees. It's kind of a midi slip dress. And I think because lace pattern is quite full until the knees and then is like netting below the knees, I don't think I want my slip dress to go that long. I think I want the slip to be the same length or a little shorter than the skirt, the more opaque skirt portion. I kind of have to modify it anyway. I think I should have enough. So of course my first step is to tape all the pieces together and then lay it out and see what my options are. Okay, so I've got my pieces cut out. I do still need to make markings on the edge to make sure I've got all the notes and everything. There are varying leaving seam allowances throughout. Truly, when I started cutting out the pattern, when I started cutting out the fabric, I cut into like the biggest, meatiest, most crucial part before I thought to check if seam allowances were included or not. So like that was a scary minute, but they are, except it says 1/2 inch unless we're otherwise noted, and I've noticed that it's noted a lot around that there's different seam allowances. So I do want to make sure I make note of all of those before I try to move this elsewhere. It is a bazillion degrees in here. I had plenty of fabric. I don't know if you noticed how much I had left over when I was cutting, but like tons left over. And I didn't shorten it or anything yet. I think I'm just gonna kind of sew the slip together and see where it falls on my actual body before I try to shorten it, because I'm not like super tall, but I'm taller than average. So something that comes down mid-calf length on the model in the picture might not be so long on me, and I just thought I would stop and check first. I'm going to make the markings on these and follow the very limited instructions to kind of get started on seaming this together. At this point, the most time-consuming task on this entire dress has been turning these little teeny tiny strips inside out after I seam them, and super frustratingly, the safety pin like ripped open this one. So I guess I'm just gonna redo it. So actually, making a new one is gonna be too much work because I don't have a large enough piece of scrap fabric. So I'm gonna try to just hand sew it closed. Ugh. Oh god, this is incredibly fiddly, and it doesn't help that this needy little cat won't stop interfering. All right, so that was exhausting. I've always find sewing very tiring. I'm not experienced, so I always run into things that I'm not sure how to do or make preventable mistakes because I don't think about things. So since this was cut on the bias, I want to put it on the dress form, let it hang out overnight. The pattern is very simple and easy to understand. It does not, however, have... Is this gonna fit me? Not bad, actually. I don't have the experience to know off the bat at the beginning of a sewing project what types of seams I'm going to need to use or like what types of finishes. So that information would have been helpful for me. The insides are like, you know, just sewn together. There's no seam finishing whatsoever, and this fabric is very prone to fraying. So I think I'm going to have to roll it over and do something to finish it off tomorrow. Is my dress form like curvier than me now? We used to be the same, but I don't know. I didn't have such a hard time getting this on. And she, like, look at this. Look at all this extra back here that I don't think was a problem on me. All right. Well, no shame, girl. I just thought we were the same. Anyway, I'm going to let this hang overnight because it is cut on the bias. The pattern says for a couple hours, but we have plans this evening, so I know I won't get around to finishing it today. I'm going to let it hang there. I'll keep working on crocheting this one and be back to finish it up tomorrow. All right, so at a point last night, I undressed her because the skirt was like, look at the curve here. Can you see? No. This curve. And she got a booty. The dress was pooling in the back such that I didn't think it was hanging evenly all the way around. So I put it on a hanger instead to make sure it hangs evenly. Truly, I don't remember what the hem looked like yesterday because I didn't even check. Or now we can see that the front panel is much longer than the back panel, so it needs to be trimmed. I don't know if it actually stretched a lot at all or not. I'm thinking I don't need to trim it too much. Like, it's already above my knees without any trimming and hemming. So my instinct about the model in the photo probably being shorter than me was accurate. So I'm not going to purposefully remove any length. I'm just going to trim it to even it up. And then I have to do a hem, and I also, like, the facing isn't finished. And it did say to stay stitch the top of the actual dress panels, but it didn't say to do the same to the facings, which I thought was weird because then I thought the facings are going to stretch out when I do it. So to avoid that happening, instead of doing attaching the facings in one big circle, I did it in 4 parts. Like, I started in the center front and went to the seam, and then I went back to the center front and went the other direction to the seam, and I did the same in the back because I was afraid if there is any stretching or extra material, I'd rather it end up right at the underarms than anywhere along the neckline where it'll be visible. I don't think there was. It did end up lining up pretty nicely. Probably also why the seam is like a little messy and there's like a little bit of puckering at the center front. I'm not experienced enough to think that if I undid and redid this, it would be any better. And to be honest, it would probably be worse. So that's where I am. So today, all I have left to do, like I said, trim the bottom, hem the bottom, hem the inside of the facing, and then also I want to do something to finish off the seams because the seams are just fraying loose fabric, which is not cool. So my camera is malfunctioning. I just filmed this 3 times. So the way I decided to finish the seams on the inside is this very sloppy method that I don't know if it has a real name. It probably shouldn't because nobody should ever do this. It was a pain in the butt and it didn't really work. But I just kind of like took the seam allowance on both sides and tucked them in and then zigzag stitched over it so that I can at least prevent it from fraying. It looks crummy and unprofessional, but it's on the inside of the dress, so who cares? It won't show. I decided not to hem around the edge of this facing because I don't want to have like a lump that shows through this very slinky fabric where the facing stops. So I'm just going to pink around the edges. I don't know how much that'll actually help because this is super, super prone to fraying, I guess. Yeah, I'm just going to pink around the edges and then hem around the bottom, and I should be done with this guy. Well, it's not my worst. I wouldn't say it's the best project I've ever done, but it's exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a slip that's going to go under this crochet lace dress. So yeah, the hem probably isn't even. Maybe the neckline isn't even. I'm starting to suspect. Yeah, my hem finishing is rather unkempt, but in the end, it's really just a slip to go under this dress, and you really can't see it all that much. You certainly can't see the details or the mistakes that much. And it goes very well with this. And this is the whole point. So obviously, I still have a ways to do. This is an ankle length gown. So I have a lot more crocheting to do. This is a pretty large circumference, if you can see here. So I've got a lot more crocheting to do before the dress itself is done, but at least the slip part is done. I can check that off my list. I have 2 more projects for my vacation, 1 more crochet and 1 more sewing. My upcoming sewing project is going to be to make the Trailblazer convertible backpack. This one's way more complex than this free slip pattern. And the crochet project is not as time consuming. I think though it is the Shell Yea bikini by Knitting Tipsy. So check back for those 2 projects. I'm sure they'll come out around the same time as this one, but I think I'm going to hold off on releasing this video until I have finished this gown and can actually wear it and show you the finished product. So I thought I would check in about my Lily dress. I was doing really well. I was plugging away at it. I finished the slip dress a while ago and it felt good. I just had to add length. Once I got to the knees, I started adding the netted section. So this dress, because it's made to measure and due to the nature of the lace design, can be really difficult to predict. What I mean is, it's made to measure, so it's not giving you a certain number of rows or based off of a gauge. It's saying, keep working in the round until it reaches your knees or until it reaches above your ankles or something like that. And the issue I'm having is that I'm doing that and it looks fine and everything's good. And then once I move on to the next step and add a bunch more rounds, it's actually adding so much weight that the last checkpoint moved. So for instance, you're supposed to lengthen the skirt with the more solid crochet pattern, like not the netting, until you hit the knees. And then you're supposed to switch to the sort of netted pattern, which I did. But then after I had added a bunch of the netted pattern and I tried it on again, the solid part was weighed down so much that it was well past my knees. So like, it's not moving the finish line. It's like moving the whole thing. It makes it difficult. So there's like the stages of the skirt are like when you hit the waist, you're increasing the circumference and increasing so many stitches every row. And then at a point you stop increasing, but you keep working in the same stitch pattern, lengthening, and then you move into a netting pattern. And then at the bottom, there's a sort of ruffle created by using a slightly larger netted stitch pattern. Well, I've been picking at it every day and working on it, but I was getting to the point where I was only able to do like 1 or 2 rounds a day because it's a big circumference to the skirt, and I'm working on so many other things that by the time I get to it at the end of the day, I don't have enough time or energy to really do all that much. So last week I tried it on, I measured, I thought I have about 4 more inches to do until I get to the part where I should switch to the larger netting. Then after about a week, I added those 4 inches, which is crazy because it's about 4 or 5 rows with this stitch pattern. I tried it on again after adding those 4 or 5 rows, and it's like longer than I think it should be at this stage. I went back to the pictures in the pattern to kind of see like what the designer had done, and it's easy enough to count the rows on her pattern. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. She switched way sooner than I did, or I didn't anticipate how the whole dress would shift down with weight, and I should have done it a while back. Her smaller netting and her larger netting were just about the same visual height on the pattern. The point I was at, I wouldn't have been able to add more than a couple more rows, and then it would be long enough. But I had already done like 15 rows of the smaller netting, so it would have looked like, I think, odd, instead of like 10 rows of small, 10 rows of large, to have like 15 rows of small and like 3 or 4 rows of large. It would have looked kind of unbalanced. So I frogged back. I ripped back, I don't remember exactly, but like 7 or 8 rows last night, and I decided to switch to the larger netting sooner. It's a setback for sure. It's Monday right now, and I leave for my cruise first thing Thursday morning. I did already finish sewing my backpack, which is a relief. That was the one I was most nervous about. Please watch that video if you didn't. That was a fun one to make, and I'm really proud of how it came out. I'm almost done with the bikini as well. I'm like 95% done. I just have to like seam up the crotch and do elastic around the leg holes, but I was waiting to do that until I had a swimsuit liner to sew into it, which I know I have in my stash somewhere, but I went through the whole thing over the weekend and I couldn't find it at all. So I had to go to Joann and get more swim liner. I didn't want to sew up the seam until I had the liner, because I think it'll be easier to trace the pattern pieces for the liner when it's flat and not like three-dimensional. So I'm gonna do that. I mean, that's a couple hours long project. I can finish up the bikini pretty quickly. I haven't been focusing on that much in these vlogs because on YouTube I can't share the finished object without getting demonetized, because it's a swimsuit and it's, I suppose, in YouTube's standards, rather naughty. So I was just gonna focus on the backpack and the gown, and I'm certainly gonna show the finished swimsuit on Instagram and stuff. But where I'm at now, I wasn't focusing on it. But I thought it's worth mentioning that at this point I have about 48 hours to do a lot of crochet on the gown and to do the finishing touches on the bikini. So let's see what happens. I'm so behind. I'm very anxious, but I'm pressing on. Today's Wednesday. It is my last day to finish everything before my cruise, and I haven't. I finished the swimsuit last night, but it took way longer than I anticipated it would. I thought it would be pretty straightforward. I've made a bikini top before and it was very straightforward, but this time it wasn't. I was having a more difficult time easing the edges of the pieces in. Maybe I just didn't pay enough attention when cutting them out. I don't know. They didn't fit super well, but I didn't want to start over. I did ultimately whip stitch lining into both swimsuit pieces and finish entirely, you know, attaching elastic around the leg holes. So it's done, but I spent less time working on the lily gown yesterday than I thought I would. So I know I need at least 8 rounds of the larger netting at the bottom, possibly more. Last night when I went to bed, I was like halfway through round 5. So I feel like I might be up late tonight, or I might be finishing this in the car on the way to the cruise port. Anyway, I'm out of time for other things. And you know what? Packing for the entire vacation takes priority over crocheting one garment for one night of the vacation. So I'm gonna do my packing and do other stuff, and I don't know where we're gonna go. Just sitting down to work on this, and I've literally got like 20 minutes or so between like finishing packing and doing my nails and all the things that I wanted to do this afternoon before my husband picks me up, because we have to go to the grocery store to get some grocery shopping done for him before I leave. Oh well, I'll get a few rows in, or not even like this. I'll get a few stitches in, I guess. And then I'll do as much as I can after grocery shopping. It's after midnight, but I did it. I did the 8 repeats that I thought I would do. I stopped and tried it on after 6, and I decided it did need a couple more rows, just a little more length to get it to where I want it to be. As I was halfway through round 8, I thought, oh, I hope this is actually the end of the pattern, because I didn't plan on doing more. I kind of thought that once you do the last section of netting, it's over. There actually is a round of like trim, but it's kind of just little chains that are secured with single crochets, kind of like a little scalloped bit. And I don't know that it adds all that much, or that it'll be noticeable that it's missing. And I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think I probably have enough yarn to have done it, but to be honest, this yarn is kind of splitty anyway, being so high in cotton. And honestly, like, the more tired I get, the more clumsy I get, and those last couple rounds were like really hard. Also, I have to get up at like 5 o'clock, 5:30ish tomorrow morning, which is in 5 hours. So I'm gonna call it quits. I think I wove in all the ends, I'm not sure, but I'm bringing knitting supplies with me anyway, as always. So if I didn't, I can just weave in any that are still out when I'm on the cruise. So good night, and I guess for you, it's time for the reveal. We're getting ready for formal night, and remember when this was like a little tight on my dress form? It's so hard to show. This bit is really tight, but there's plenty of fabric in the dress itself. It's the facing that is making it. So what if we do a little emergency cosmetic surgery on this baby? So when you pull tight on it, you can see the horizontal lines puckering right at the V-neck. So that's where the tension is. So I'm thinking I'm just going to use my yarn snips and kind of just in the facings, just a little extra wiggle room. Right now we just have some little slits there. Oh, better. I mean, it's certainly not too tight anymore. The facing is doing its best to peek out a little now, but once it has the weight of the larger dress on top, I don't think it'll be a problem.
So if it's not obvious, I love how this lily gown came out. Like I said, I love the pattern. I would recommend it if you could get it, but it's not available right now. It was a very simple pattern overall, and it was really fun to make, even if it did get a bit tedious once I got into the very repetitive sections of the skirt. That said, I'm not sure it was the best idea for a cruise. I mean, I guess I wasn't flying, so I didn't have to deal with weight limits or anything, but it is a very heavy, very bulky dress, and it did make it difficult for me to pack. So I am so glad that I did this. I really enjoyed the sewing as well as the crochet aspects of this. It was another confidence reinforcing project for me to be able to make some nice things in the crafts that I'm less practiced in, and the results I created were really satisfactory. I felt really confident and good in the dress. It's fun to wear. It was super swooshy, and the skirt was just enormous, and the weight of it does swing and swoosh as you walk, and it's very fun to wear for sure. So thanks for tagging along on my little lily gown vlog. I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the like button below and maybe subscribe to the channel. As always, I enjoyed my crafting and I enjoyed sharing it with you, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.